I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that I grew up in the golden age of cereals. I grew up in the 1980s, child of the 80s, teenager of the 90s. So it was the mid-80s when they started to take the word sugar out of cereal, but not the actual sugar. No lie, cereal is still one of my favorite things. My mother can tell you there were times that I could eat a box of cereal, which I'm sure was cheap as far as making dinner for me. Just here's a box, eat it. But I don't know how healthy it was. I'd love to have those days now. Go buy a box of cereal and just eat it all and not have to worry. But those days are gone. Through the annals of cereal history, which, it goes back over a century, there have been a lot of classics that have come out and stayed. Corn Flakes, Wheaties, Rice Krispies, and then more modern ones, Frosted Flakes, Cocoa Puffs, Apple Jacks. I should just make this whole segment me just listing cereals. Well, it's going to be anyway, but I mean just random ones. But for all of those ones that came and stayed and became famous cereals, there were some that were here briefly and were gone. So what we're going to do right now is look at the top 5 discontinued cereals. It's almost like one-hit wonders. These really captured a moment and then they were gone when the novelty wore off. As with most of these lists, there are some honorable mentions and the top 5s in no particular order. And I'm sure your list will not jive with mine because there's a lot that I had listed that I just started eliminating. I could have done a top 50, but that was not an option on Listener's Choice. Honorable mentions for discontinued cereals include Quisp, which was a space-themed cereal from Quaker Oats with a distinct saucer shape and sugary flavor. No way, sugar. There was E.T. cereal through General Mills that obviously was in conjunction with the E.T. movie. It was about as successful as the E.T. video game. There was Pac-Man cereal, also from General Mills and in conjunction with the video game. Ghost-shaped marshmallows, Pac-Man-shaped cereal. And the last honorable mention is Smurf Berry Crunch, a fruity cereal from Post based on the Smurfs cartoon. Did you eat any of those? Quisp was around for more than a decade, so I think that you'd have the best opportunity for. But let's get into the actual top 5 discontinued cereals. Here we go. Starting with number 1, Dunkin' Donuts cereal.
Introducing a big idea from a giant in the business, the world's smallest donuts. Ta-da! In new Dunkin' Donuts cereal, you get delicious, crunchy little donuts by the hundreds, all your favorite donut shapes.
Yes, the popular donut chain restaurant had its own cereal from 1988 to 1990. And this is the original Dunkin' Donuts cereal. They have re-released it, and I think you can find it some places in Walmart. But this is the original with Fred the Baker, the mascot of Dunkin' Donuts, on the box. This cereal was Puffs, and it was available in 2 different varieties, glazed and chocolate. You can find commercials for this cereal on YouTube. Their biggest claim to fame, I guess, when they were out, was that you could send away for a Dunkin' Donuts duffel bag. I guess that would be kind of like a collector's item now. I mean, people bought those jumpsuits, right? The Ben Affleck and Matt Damon in the Super Bowl commercial. So I guess people would be in the market for a duffel bag. I never had Dunkin' Donuts cereal, but this next one I did. Number 2, Nintendo Cereal System.
Nintendo, it's for breakfast now. Nintendo, it's a cereal. Wow. Nintendo, Super Mario Chunks. Nintendo, in a fruit-flavored crunch.
I mentioned this on the podcast way back in the archives. The cereal was out for a year, maybe a little more, 1988, 89. But that was right in my wheelhouse with playing Nintendo. So I saw the commercials and said, oh, we got to have that. It was a dual-pack cereal, so 2 little bags inside the Ralston box. One bag was for Super Mario Brothers cereal. The other was for Legend of Zelda. The box says that it has 2 artificial flavors, fruity and berry. So I didn't know that berry wasn't fruit and fruit wasn't berry. I remember this cereal being okay, But when it came down to it, I'd rather have a Nintendo or a Game Boy be playing the game than eating the cereal based on the game. Because I would think if a parent brought that home and said to the kid, I got you Nintendo, and they're excited for the game console, and then it's a box of cereal, they'd be so mad. Number 3 is Crispy Critters.
Hello, my name is Crispy. How do you do? Crispy Critters cereal's entirely new. It's indubitably delicious.
The cereal was from Post. It was actually around in the 1960s, the mid-60s. I remembered it coming back in the late 80s, 87, 88. And it had this stupid commercial. Hello, my name is Crispy. I don't remember if we ever got this cereal. My family wasn't rich growing up in the 1980s, but I do remember my mother and stepfather always being willing to try new cereals for all of us 5 kids. So I'm sure if we had asked for Crispy Critters, they would have gotten it. I guess the major difference in the relaunch of Crispy Critters in 1987 was that it was considered now a low-sugar cereal, but it had animal-shaped pieces to it. But the fact that it only lasted for like a year or so when it came back tells you that changing it to a low-sugar cereal did not work. Number 4 is C-3POs.
3POs?
New Kellogg's C-3POs, twin rings, phased together for a crunchy new force at breakfast.
Yeah, the Force is with us.
Naturally, this cereal is based on the Star Wars franchise, the droid C-3PO. It was from Kellogg's, and they were shaped like C-3PO's face as much as cereal can look like a face. Honey-sweetened oats, so it was kind of like Honey Nut Cheerios, but C-3PO's face. An interesting thing about C-3POs, and maybe a reason why it only lasted for a couple of years, was that they released it in 1984, so a year after Return of the Jedi came out, and there wouldn't be a new Star Wars movie until 1999. So it's like they really didn't capitalize on the success of Star Wars. But of course, for me as a child back then, 7, 8 years old, they had the classic commercials for C-3POs. That feels like a cereal that they could relaunch at any time because now Star Wars is kind of just evergreen. There have been so many movies, so many animated series, offshoot movies. But I saved possibly the best for last and possibly the most dated for discontinued cereals. And that is number 5, Mr. T cereal.
Teaming up with Mr. T cereal. It's getting on the team that knows how cool breakfast can be. You get a crispy corn taste with a touch of brown sugar. Teaming up with Mr. T.
It's cool.
Mr. T is an actor. He was hugely famous in the early 1980s for the A-Team, for Rocky III, for being part of the main event of the first WrestleMania. So naturally he needs his own cereal. How come they didn't make Knight Rider cereal? It's just a question for you. You might also remember that Mr. T cereal was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure when Pee-wee said, I pity the fool that doesn't eat my cereal. It was simple. Corn and oat cereal from Quaker Oats, shaped like the letter T. There wasn't marshmallow mohawks or anything foolish like that. You might be surprised to know that the cereal lasted almost a decade. It came out in 1984 and was discontinued in 1993. It's like by that point, Mr. T was close to doing those 1-800-COLLECT commercials, so he wasn't a really big star anymore. But there you have it, the top 5 discontinued cereals. Did you remember eating any of these? Like I said, the only one I remember having was Nintendo cereal. And there are so many that I left out that there'll probably be discontinued cereals part 2. Because I didn't even get into OJ's or ice cream cones or Rocky Road. And those are all just from the mid-80s. So thank you for voting for that one. That was a fun one to go through.